up, y'all? Happy weekend. We are chugging along in spooky season. Hopefully you guys get your apple cider, get on down to Apple Hill, Haunted Forest, Universal, whatever it is y'all do for spooky season. Before I jump into this episode, I do just want to say, it's very corny, I know, but I just want to say thank you for everyone that's listening to my podcast. I really do appreciate it, and it's really awesome, and it's very encouraging for me to know that you guys are still tuning in every week just to support me. So thank you for that, in all honesty. This episode isn't necessarily going to be a fun one. Very sorry. It's definitely not going to be funny, which honestly I don't know that any of my podcasts are really funny, but I think this is an important one for me because I think I came to terms with something pretty tricky today and this weekend. This last little bit I've been thinking about this. It's kind of like my hard truth, right? So I'm using this platform to try to raise awareness and to initiate those difficult conversations that no one wants to have, right? I mean, I'm not dumb, right? I'm aware of the environment out there. I know what it's like when you're with friends or you're in a work group or anything like that, and anything related to race gets brought up and everyone tenses up, and then suddenly they have a phone call they need to go make, or a meeting to go to, or any other number of excuses to leave the situation, right? No one's comfortable talking about race, unfortunately. Like I said, it's kind of become like a swear word, sort of. And you know, you're somewhere, you're in one of those groups, and you know, the white person says, well, yeah, anyone can promote, anyone can get this job, anyone can succeed in whatever category of life that they're talking about. You just have to try hard, and you just have to do the right things, and you know, you just have to do more. And all of the minorities around are just kind of silent because they know that they'll never get the same privilege or treatment that the white person does. Or the leaders that say, well, I'm not offended that, you know, someone dressed up as an Afghani, so I don't think I'm going to say anything because it wasn't against me and I'm not involved, so I don't want to be involved. I just won't bring it up. Or the people that are, you know, quote unquote colorblind, and therefore think that if no one ever mentions anything about inequality, then it just won't exist anymore and it won't be a problem. Or the fact that we still think that equality will fix our problems as compared to equity. And I mean, again, I'm not dumb, right? Like, I look at my podcast stats. The episodes that don't have an aggressive or controversial title absolutely have lower click rates and lower listen rates than the ones that don't. And I'm not gonna lie, that was kind of intentional. It was kind of like a little, not like a test, but like just to kind of see. Because when I was thinking about it, when I first started this podcast, I was like, well, you know, maybe, I don't know. Like if I'm pretty direct and blatant in the title and the you know, like the little intro explanation synopsis part for the episode. Like if I say in there like, hey, I'm talking about racism, will people listen? Or if I, you know, reframe it as societal issues or hard truths or things like that, will that have a higher click rate? And I mean, Halloween costumes, languages, good intentions, those ones are clicked on and listened all the way through dang near twice as often as racism is real or racial disparity in the healthcare setting or things like that. And I mean, like I said, I'm not dumb. I know that's not coincidence. That's intentional. People don't want to hear this stuff. And so, all of this to say, right? All of this podcast, everything I've been like studying about, everything I read about, everything I've been striving for, is all just to raise awareness and to start those difficult conversations, right? Because like I said before in other episodes, this was me. Sometimes this is still me. We all have unconscious bias. I know where I started from, and it was pretty gnarly, right? All we can hope to do is just raise awareness and then move past it. And that's kind of always been my goal, right? Change society, one conversation, one person at a time. But all of this to say, I did kind of have an epiphany lately, especially about my life once I separate from the military, because I'm trying to teach English, right? And I keep talking about my husband moving and where we're going to go, because basically with our timelines at this rate, like when he moves, that's when I will be transitioning to a civilian lifestyle. And then I can, start my real teaching career. So they're all sort of synonymous. Wherever we move to is where I'm going to start the next chapter of my life. And so anyway, everybody keeps asking me like, oh, where are you hoping to go? And we keep saying like, like we're kind of open for anywhere. Unfortunately, right now it's looking like we'll only really have an opportunity for stateside in the meantime. But we're saying like, okay, well, maybe Georgia for the Korean community, or maybe Colorado, or maybe Utah for the hiking and camping, or maybe Texas for my family, or maybe Oregon for the landscapes, or maybe Southern LA or San Diego for Daniel's family, or for the cultures, the diversity. All of these options, right? But the conversations every time, they always include at some point in the conversation, I always say, I add the caveat of anywhere but the Midwest. Like, we just don't want to go back there because realistically, Daniel will have a much harder time trying to recruit in those areas. And two, selfishly, but for me, like, I don't want to work in that environment. I don't want to live in that environment. And so even the people that I grew up with back home, I've absolutely drifted away from them throughout the years. Pretty much once I left for the military, my contact with them, it just pretty much became less and less consistent until eventually it did just stop altogether. And which, to a certain extent, there is a reason for it, right? We're living separate lives. We don't have anything in common anymore. But now, when I do go home, or like when family members talk about how they're still friends or anything like that, I find myself attaching an unconscious, or honestly in my case, pretty conscious of a bias on them because of their lifestyle and their choice to stay in that rural area. Because they all just love it. They're like, why would you ever leave? And I just want to live here and die here and just never leave this vortex of what they call a community, basically. And honestly, at this point, I kind of just confirm with my own bias that they're willfully choosing to stay unaware of the racial disparity and the starkly white environment that they surround themselves with. And so I talk about that. I talk about all of the systemically racist courses and aspects of the universities and the schools back home. And I always just say, like, I never want to teach there. I never want to go back to the Midwest. But then I'm thinking, and this is where it gets a little tough for me, because if I'm creating this platform to raise awareness and to face those difficult conversations, doesn't that make me pretty hypocritical that I don't want to go back? I know the educational system in our country is not excellent. In fact, it's pretty broken, to say the least. I know that going into it. But I want to try to help where I can and fix it from the inside, essentially. Like I always say, just one student, one classroom, one school at a time. And I know that I want to teach at the underfunded, the lower socioeconomic background schools to help make more of a difference. And so if that's the case, shouldn't I be more focused on going to these whitewashed schools where I know that there are issues with systemic racism? Shouldn't I avoid staying in an area like LA that I know is culturally diverse and moderately welcoming, because in a way that's just me hiding behind an easier fight? It's me avoiding the difficult conversations to say, hey, friend I grew up with my entire life, I don't support or stand with your broken ideals. So like maybe that's exactly where I need to go first, because I know for certain that that's where a lot of the disconnect is. And, I was just talking to someone at work the other day, because like for a little bit of the time they'll work with us, and then part of the time they, have a full-time job and all that. And she teaches full-time, at a university back home. And she was talking to me about my plans when I separate. And she was like, oh, come work at my school. We've got openings. Like, come work in the school district. You're going to love it, blah, blah, blah. And of course I didn't say this, but my first reaction was like, absolutely not. Like, that's the last place I want to go because I don't want to work in that demographic area. Like, that's the exact opposite. Like, I'm trying to destroy schools like that. I'm trying to end those. But now I'm thinking about more, and maybe that is where I could make a bigger impact. Maybe I could bring some good and some diversity into their curriculum, just raise the question of like, hey, why can't we incorporate Toni Morrison into the classroom, or Langston Hughes, or any other BIPOC authors whatsoever? How about we just don't put asterisks next to the electives that feature any quote-unquote non-traditional English courses? You know, I think that's my hard truth that I need to resolve internally and come to terms with. Because if I stay here, or, you know, in any diverse area, yes, I can help those students, hopefully help those students that don't have the same advantages as other kids. And, you know, hopefully they can grow up and do great things. But I think the other aspect of this bigger picture conflict that we need to resolve, that I think I'm kind of overlooking, is the aspect with the current academia leaders and the current faculty and the current teachers. And maybe that's where I need to start too, kind of from the inside, and just work on the system. Because yeah, maybe those kids from the underfunded schools that I help now, hopefully, maybe they grow up and be amazing. But if we don't fix the system now and get them even a foot in the door, that kid in the next generation is never even going to have a chance. It's going to be just like how it is now. And also, the other thing too, I keep saying like, hey, we're trying to raise awareness, like just bring it to people's attentions. Because like I said, I didn't know any of this stuff when I was growing up and, you know, when I was on my own and all that. Who's going to tell them? Someone has to, right? Someone had to tell me. Now I kind of feel like it's my responsibility to tell others. If I don't go there because I don't want to be around them, who's going to tell them? How are they ever going to know? I don't know. Like I said, this is kind of my hard truth that I need to figure out and come to terms with. Because, yeah, I feel like that might be the answer, but that's definitely not the answer that I want. Honestly, I want to stay in a culturally diverse area. But maybe, like I said, maybe that's my hard truth. Maybe that's not what's actually best. Maybe that's just me taking the easy way out. I don't know. So, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to my rant. If you have any advice for me, please feel free to reach out, because we all know I need it. But yeah, sorry this episode was kind of a downer. My bad. I'll have something more pleasant and more uplifting for y'all next week. But have a great rest of your week. Make good choices. Be decent human beings. Get ready for Halloween. And I will catch y'all next week. Okay, bye.